Good morning, my brothers, my sisters. I hope everyone's good. I come before you all this morning with a heart full of gratitude, my brothers, my sisters. Praise the good Lord. What an incredible day to be alive. Now, I've been out this morning trying to perk myself up a little bit. I'm a little bit under the weather. Physically, I'm a little bit under the weather. Spiritually, I'm fantastic this morning. I've been out for a walk, and spiritually, I feel so enriched. I feel right where I'm supposed to be this morning, and I'm going to share with you a little story, something what's happened to us, and I think it's remarkable. Bear with me. Now, something I've never told anyone really. Alice knows, my mum and my brother obviously know, and maybe one or two friends know. There was something I always kept to myself. It was the deepest, most venomous, most powerful resentment I've ever had towards anybody, ever. The whole time I've been alive. There was this one individual that I was always going to mess up. Like, told Alice and if God ever put this man in front of me, or if I ever come across him at a service station, or because I get around, I'm up and down the country everywhere, and I just thought, not if, but I thought when. I even went looking for this individual once over like Yorkshire way, Keighley area, where I knew he was known, and couldn't track him down, and that was a long time ago, 15 years or more. But the point is this. Sorry, the story is this. We'll get to the point. 22, 23 years ago, I was like 18-year-old, and my mum went out with this fella called Dave. Wasn't a bad man or anything, and him and my mum seemed happy for an amount of time, and can't really remember how the relationship broke down, but in the end, me and him had a bit of chew. We had a couple of scraps, and I can't really remember the dynamics of what happened and why, but I was a bit fiery in that. But I wasn't I wasn't physically mature at that age. I was 18. It might have been 19. I think I was 18. I was just a boy. And, my mum moved us all in with this fella. He bought a big house on Upper Bid Road and moved us all in with him. And, the relationship broke down anyway. And it was the start of, the deepest, most powerful resentment I've ever had, like I said. So he left anyways, we went back to another house, and he sold that house and whatever, and more things started coming to light in the coming months after that relationship ended, shall we say. And there was a financial issue with my granddad. And one or two things my mum told me as well, and I just thought, right, that's it. I thought I'm gonna seriously mess this individual up. One day it will happen. That was 22 years ago, right? Anytime this individual has ever came to my mind, it's put me in a foul mood, because there was the potential of something really bad happening. I knew I wasn't going to stop if I ever seen him. Like, I've said to Alison that, my life will probably be put on hold for a couple of years, if I ever see this individual. And that's not healthy. But that's how it's always been. This was that one person, and like I say, I get up and down, and I'm around. I get up and down all over the country. I even went looking for him once over like Keighley way in Yorkshire. But I get around, and I thought, if God ever puts him in front of me, I'm going to mess him up. I'm going to mess him up. Even since I've been on this journey for, the last 4 or 5 years, I've always still held that. I thought, that's the deepest resentment I've ever had, and I hated him, and I felt it was my duty, to manifest some retribution if I ever seen him, and I wasn't going to stop. Okay. So, when I haven't thought about this individual for maybe 8 months, 10 months, whatever. I remember when it last come up, and what we do subconsciously is with this sort of hatred and this sort of resentment, we bury them deep. You know, whatever I push it back down, I must do it subconsciously when it comes up, because it puts me in a foul mood, because there's like like an impending sense of doom, like a real violent, potential violent situation happening, and and I don't like it. But there's been times when I've fed off that emotion. There's been times when in the past, when I've purposely thought about this individual and the rage inside to use that emotion to fuel another situation. Right, I've done that before as well. Like the emotion was that, the resentment was that deep. It was by far the deepest, most powerful, most venomous resentment that I ever had, because I essentially stole from my granddad. And like I say, I felt it my duty to dismantle this individual if I ever got hold of him. Now, not last night, but the night before, I was reading a couple of comments on this here YouTube, and I don't read them all, but I do make effort, and apologies to anyone who I don't get back to or out, but I make effort, not every day, but I do. And I come across, I was on there about 5 minutes maybe, scrolling, and I come across a message from a fella called Dave. I'll keep his second name off it, because it's done really, but Dave, it was the fella's name. And I replied to the comment. At first I thought, is this somebody, have I told someone about this situation, and is this someone like winding me up? Is this somebody having me on? And the comment read something along the lines of, it was like a pleasure to getting to know you all these years ago, and young man, and all this stuff. I can't remember, but it was the name. So I replied to the comment and I said, prove to me that this is you. And he did. He proved that it was him. And there was, at that moment when he replied and I knew that it was him, my senses kind of changed. I moved, I immersed myself deeply, unintentionally. I immersed myself deeply into the present moment. I could have heard a pin drop, and there was like a void in emotion. I went blank. And I suppose I was probably waiting for this anger to come on. I was like, where is it? Where's this anger, this rage? I was waiting for it to come on, and I was just starting to think, what's happening here? Where is it? And I started to cry. Can you believe that? I started to cry. I wept. And Alice was like, what's the matter with you? Are you all right? And I couldn't speak for a minute or so. I was in shock, and there were tears of joy. There were tears of joy. I couldn't believe that I'd forgive this man without knowing. Unintentionally, I forgave him. And it was beautiful. The Lord works in mysterious ways. And these are the fruits. These are the rewards of, trying to live a spiritual life. Trying, key word. But isn't life just amazing sometimes? I'd been healed, in the background, unintentional, without me knowing, I'd been healed. Praise the good Lord, because if there's one thing that will outdo anything, and it's love, light. As it's written, all the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of one candle, and isn't life just amazing sometimes, and what a reward, what an absolutely amazing, incredible, lifting, liberating, spiritual reward, to have a resentment like that lifted from under my nose without even known about it, you know, until I was contacted by this individual. 22 years in the making, I've held this resentment. And eventually when he contacted us, I forgive him. I forgive him. You know, I forgive him. You know, isn't life just bizarre sometimes? And isn't, you know, love supersedes and trumps anything. And what can I say? Praise the Lord, brothers and sisters. Have an amazing weekend. I'm out at the WBKB tonight, refereeing, catching up with all the BKFC lads. Great fights, great night of action out there. You know, I look forward to it. Thank you for listening, brothers and sisters. Have a beautiful day. Ta-ra for now.